Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin, the weekly chat show where conversations about race are never off the table. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
Now, the table is always hot with current events and social issues, but sometimes the heat can get a little intense. So let's turn the temp down, take a breather, and get into this week's topic, cool down. Now, Daquon, I wanted to ask you, do you think that you can truly be in love with multiple people at the same time?
I'm going to say yes and no. I'm going to say no because I'm thinking about myself and how I am in this moment. And I don't think that I, as a person, can. Not saying that, that's me forever. Not saying that, I could never. But I think me and how I am in this moment, that's not really my vibe. But I do think that in general, it's crazy to think that there's 7 billion people on this planet and you can only love one of them at a time. How does that make sense? Where's the math? Because the math ain't mathing for me. But I do think that, love is one of those things that it's this strong entity, it's this strong force, and you can't control that. So it's crazy to think that you can't love most people at the same time, because then you're like, oh, well, I'm in love with this person, so love, you gotta stop. Can't get no more.
I think that it's always interesting when I hear people have these conversations and they're like, how could you possibly love more than one person? It's impossible. It doesn't work. And then I'm like, but don't you love your mom and your dad and your sister and your brothers and your friends? And you all you love them in different ways, don't you? You love your mom differently than you love your dad, but it doesn't mean that you love one or the other more or less than the other. And it's like, we already do that. We already love multiple people at the same time. And so I think
different aspects.
Exactly. So I think that it's really crazy that we can apply that knowledge to falling in love. Because when you fall in love with someone, you fall in love with aspects of who they are, or you fall in love with them as a person. You say, I love these elements about you, and these things are what brought me into you and what made me love you. And I think that it's also incumbent to understand that, in that same vein, you can love someone else too in the same intensity as you love the other person, but for entirely different reasons. And I think that's something people don't really recognize or understand. All this, what is it called? Those love triangles you see in TV shows and movies and stuff like that. It's like, why do they have to pick? Right. The entirety of the Twilight franchise could have been solved with a throuple.
If they were just polyamorous, it would have been fine.
Polyamor, I think that it's so crazy that we are oftentimes people we're naturally attuned to things. And like I said, I do think that everybody is different. I do think that in specific spaces, I do believe that you have to understand what it is that you are capable of and what it is that you will not be able to handle. And I think that there's some people who are able to have a more open view of love, and there's some people who have a little bit more of a monogamous view of love. And I do think that there is something to be said, because for me, personally, I do believe that I am capable of loving more than one person at the same time, as far as falling in love with a person and having multiple partners. But I think I would cap out at 2. I think that I would 2 people would be is enough. That'll be enough for me. But I wouldn't have a problem with just dating one person. If a throuple happened with me, it would have to be something that just kind of happened or occurred, versus something that we're I'm not actively seeking out to be in a trimonogamous or throuple relationship. That's not my goal. But I wouldn't be opposed to being in a trimonogamous relationship. But like I said before, I think there's a level of conversation that we don't have with ourselves, because there's so many people who are not capable of monogamy, and they are in monogamous relationships. Right. And it's because our society has taught us that we should aspire for the traditional monogamous 2-person relationship. And I think that so many people are so bogged down by religious shit, or all Christianity or whatever, and being that Christianity is the biggest religion in the world, it has been so influential in our society, and the fact that like people don't even think that that's a possibility. And like long ago, back in the day, like that shit wasn't something new. Like this is not nothing new. Like that's why I hate people say, "Oh, this is just the millennials, oh now." And it's like, bitch, it's been around for like decades, century. Like you didn't hear about. You remember the conversation back in the early '90s and 2000s about swingers, or
Right.
way back in the Grecian times, we were having full on orgies and stuff, and all kind of like it's not this. Having multiple partners is not a new thing. It's not a new concept. There are so many, even religious teachings or some religions that have like multiple wives and some in the fourth or whatever. So like, I just think it's really crazy that it's not normalized in our society yet. Like it's still something that's completely, well, no, it's not that crazy because again, even homosexuality has existed since the beginning of time, and people are like, oh no, honey, that's some bullshit. That's a millennial shit. You know what I mean? What do you think?
I agree with you. I agree 100% because it's one of those things that's like, you always think, oh, these polyamory relationships, it's like these crazy taboo things, or you think about like sister wives or like shows that like try to depict people who have like multiple partners as being weird and different and just like
Yeah.
non-moral. And I think that the problem is that you see this as being something immoral, and like at the end of the day, like a lot of polyamorous relationships work because there is so much consent, because there is so much
Exactly.
communication. And so that's why like for somebody like me, I'm like, I probably can't handle that right now because like I barely communicate with myself, if I'm being honest. Like I
Yeah.
stay booked and busy, as you know.
Yeah.
So, like I have a lot to do. So having that relationship with one person is enough, let alone, having that ability and that time to really devote to like communicating and sharing love with multiple people at the same time. Not in my wheelhouse at the moment. But like you, I can see myself, like I wouldn't, be like, oh, never, never in a million years. Like if it happens, like it happens, and I'm not gonna like fight against it,
I do think that there is something to be said too, because I think the first thing people go to is sex. That the reason
Mm-hmm.
why people want to have trinogamous relationships is sex. And it's like, that's not like, they're just like, oh, you just want a three-way. It's like, no, I think that real people do, I think that it goes back to that conversation we had before about like even just homosexuality and the media being considered, oh, it's always about sex, it's always about that. And it's kind of like, no, this is not about immorality or sex. It's sex is a part of it, yeah, but it's not the main part of why people get in these relationships. They get in these relationships because people fall in love, and it just happens. You can't really control who you fall in love with. You can't really control how many either. And I think there's something to be said too. Also, shit, if you want to be real T girl, like, bitch, you know what, bitch, you have three people in the house. That's the bill split three down the middle.
Girl, we're not talking about bills.
Mortgage. If it's split between three people, if your mortgage is $500 and you split it between three people, that ain't shit.
Right. One person takes the internet bill, one person takes the water bill, one person takes the power bill.
Baby, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Who cooking tonight? It's between the three of us. I ain't gotta cook two. I only gotta cook what? About 2 nights a week. Like, you know what I'm saying? But that's me being joking a little bit. But the truth is, I just really do think that people are just not really aware. And I think that there's so much closed-mindedness in our society. And I'm just kind of like, bitch, grow up. Like, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. But don't dog walk or get mad at other people because they're like, this is my thing. If you don't, and they're like, oh, here we go, the kids. Bitch, you got three daddies. You got a mom and two dads, or whatever kind of combination you got. If one of them busy, go to another one and spend time with them. This person busy, go to this person. I mean,
people just stay in other people's business, and I'm just like, mind the business that pays you.
Oh my God, the world would be such a better place if people would just mind their motherfucking business. Like, let it go.
Free.
If it's not hurting someone, or if it's not affecting you, why does it matter to you at all? And that's on period public example. So many children grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to society and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. Now, in the article, 26 Black Americans You Don't Know But Should, we learn about Mary Ann Anderson. Now, though she's considered one of the greatest contralto singers in the world, Anderson was often denied the opportunity to show off her vocal range because of her race. However, things started to change in 1957 when she went on a 12-nation tour sponsored by the Department of State and the American National Theater and Academy. She documented the experience in her autobiography, My Lord, What a Morning. Now, in 1963, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Her last major accomplishment before her death was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys in 1991.
Again, Black
women.
Black women and Black musicians not getting their flowers because of racism.
Period.
So for mine, I wanted to pay homage to World's AIDS Day, which was December 1st. So in the article on blackpast.org, we learned about Essex Hemphill, who was a unapologetically open gay man, poet, and performer. Hemphill studied English at the University of Maryland, College Park. During a poetry reading at Howard University in 1980, he came out publicly as gay. Hemphill's first books, Earth Life in 1985 and Conditions in 1986, both addressed the impact of AIDS on both the Black community and the larger gay community. His critically acclaimed anthology, In the Life, one of the first collections of writing by a gay Black man, opened to the general public the topic of homosexuality in the African American community. Hemphill's Brother to Brother in 1988, which was a collection of essays written by Black gay men, was also considered groundbreaking at the time. By mid-1994, however, Hemphill's health was rapidly declining and he died of complications from AIDS on November 4th, 1995, at the age of 38.
But still, Black queer talent.
Right.
Fucking up the game, bitch. Fucking it up. Now, as always, thank you all so much for watching. And please keep the conversation going down in the comment box below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are listening to us on our podcast, please rate and review on whatever platform you're using. If you want to follow us on social media, our handles are at Andre Talks a Lot and at Daquon950. You can also follow our podcast on Instagram at The Melanin Margin for updates of new content. Now, we will see you all next week on the Melanin Margin, where our goal is always to bring the marginalized to the spotlight in any way we can, okay?
Goodbye now.